Okay, so you know why you create an academic poster. You know how you're going to start to compose that academic poster, so plan it on a page. And we've not even started writing on the thing yet, but I'm going to consider colours next. We're doing a lot to do with the visual elements so far, but this is to build our confidence and at least get us moving, making this poster rather than sitting there looking at a blank page. So let's go. Now, without getting into the colour theory too much, I'm going to recommend that you guys look at the colour wheel. Please consider it as an absolute basic necessity. So I am sick of looking at posters that have really bright red text on a really bright blue background. Incredibly difficult to read, actually makes me feel uncomfortable and potentially sick. So instead, check out some of the free colour wheel tools that are online, which are quite interactive. So you can kind of click into them anywhere and it will allow you to basically build a colour palette for yourself. Now, there are a number of ways you can do this. As an example, I recommend you build a colour palette of probably about 5 to 6 colours, which are going to be utilised again and again in the design of that work. Now, you could look at palettes which are monochrome. These are one colour but different shades within that colour, which could be interesting as a really out there design choice. However, I recommend one of two things, or probably a mixture of both of these things. Use both analogous colours and complementary colours. So analogous colours are a colour scheme that is next to each other on the colour wheel. They usually match quite well, and luckily for your viewer or audience, they create a feeling of serenity because nothing is clashing, nothing is painful. It doesn't make me want to rip your poster to pieces. The difficulty with an analogous colour scheme or palette is that they don't have a lot of visual acuity from each other, i.e. there isn't a lot of contrast. So don't you dare put orange text over a red background or something similar, because it's just going to be so difficult to read. So whilst you might have an analogous element of your colour palette, make sure if you're going to be contrasting things with that, they would be complementary in colour or design. So these are colours that are opposite of each other on the colour wheel. So these are considered complementary, i.e. blue and yellows or oranges, these stand out against each other. If you compare one against the other, if you put one over the other, it's much, much clearer for your viewer. Of course, these aren't the only ways, so you might use a triadic colour scheme. These are colours that are evenly spaced around the colour wheel. You might really commit to one side of the colour wheel, such as warm colours of red, orange, yellow, or combinations of those, versus cool colours, which are blue, greens, and maybe light purples. The good thing about considering colours as part of your poster is that you can use what I talked about much earlier in a different video, style and substance. This is where I'm going to recommend a really discreet thing, which is using colour as a tool. So you can change things like the gradient of colour from one part of the poster to the next, or from the start of the poster to the end, to guide your viewer and actually send them in a direction, even if you're not right next to your poster speaking to them. We can do this with the opacity of the actual colour itself, so kind of fading a colour away into the background or introducing that colour into the foreground. You could change this with the hue of a colour. So this is kind of the brightness of that colour. You could tint the colour and actually make it lighter. So this desaturates the hue. Think of your pastel colours for this one. Tinted colours could actually be very visually pleasing and easier on the viewer. So like I say, please consider colours for like a good 10-20 minutes. Make yourself a consistent colour palette that you're going to use throughout your poster. And then think about how you can use that palette in the visual elements of your poster. So we're not just making a background here, and we're not just picking a colour of text here. We're actually going to incorporate it into the visual elements of the poster as a whole, which I'll talk about next.